Walk through this terminal, and nothing feels unstable. The baggage belts run smoothly, trains arrive right on time, and the floor beneath you feels completely level. Millions of people pass under these arched ceilings, assuming the building is anchored to solid earth. It is not. Look at this high-altitude shot of Kansai International Airport. It sits entirely offshore, resting on an artificial island in Osaka Bay. And that island is still sinking into the ocean by about 5 centimeters every single year. This diagram shows why total sinking isn't actually the main structural threat. If an entire building drops uniformly, it stays flat. The real danger is differential settlement. When one section of the ground moves faster than another, that twists structural frames, breaks pipes, and permanently warps the slopes that drain rainwater away. Maintaining the ordinary passenger experience you feel at the check-in desk requires a sprawling, invisible mechanical system constantly correcting the ground from below. Kansai exists in the bay because the original problem began on land. Look at the older Itami airport here, completely boxed in by dense urban development. Severe noise restrictions meant it couldn't operate around the clock, so Japan pushed their new facility out into the ocean, where flights wouldn't bother neighborhoods. But building offshore stripped away the one thing an airport normally gets for free: stable ground. Before engineers could pour a single runway, they had to manufacture the earth beneath it. When you drop millions of tons of rock and sand into the ocean to build an island, it doesn't land on a hard surface. It lands on thick, soft clay. The enormous weight presses down like a hand on a wet sponge, physically forcing trapped water up and out through a process called consolidation. This geological cross-section highlights how much water had to escape. The shallow clay directly beneath the seabed was roughly 70% water by volume. Even the older, deeper clay further down contained about 40%. As that water slowly escapes, the soil particles pack tighter together. The island isn't floating away, and a hollow cave isn't opening up beneath it. The physical earth is simply compressing, setting up a slow-motion descent that naturally takes decades to stabilize. To prevent the softer top layer from shifting unevenly beneath their new terminals, engineers decided to make the ground sink on purpose. Here we see how they did it. By driving vertical columns of sand deep into the seabed, they created a massive grid of shortcuts. Instead of slowly seeping upward through thick clay, trapped water could move sideways into the sand and shoot rapidly to the surface. Zooming out, you can see the true scale of this operation. Crews installed 1 million of these 20-meter-long sand drains for the first island, spaced just 2.5 meters apart. By giving the water an immediate exit route, they forced decades of settlement to happen in roughly 1 year. That solved the shallow clay. But as the artificial island climbed out of the water, its effective weight increased, pressing heavily into the older, stiffer clay layers hundreds of meters below the bay. In this wide view, the older first island on the left has descended an average of 13.7 meters, roughly a 4-story building. The newer second island on the right is at an earlier stage, dropping more than 17.6 meters so far. Engineers deliberately exhausted the shallow sinking before the first plane ever landed, but the deep sinking is a permanent condition. The airport simply has to manage the movement. All of that downward motion puts immense physical stress on Terminal 1, which stretches for over 1.5 kilometers. To protect it, an automated monitoring system constantly tracks the exact elevation of all 900 structural columns holding the building up. When one section sinks slightly faster than the rest, heavy hydraulic jacks step in. They lift the affected column and the building above it, allowing engineers to slide permanent steel plates into the gap. The jack is removed, and the terminal floor above stays completely flat. But the warping effect of differential settlement doesn't stop at the terminal doors. Outside, runways are carefully graded surfaces designed to shed rainwater quickly and consistently. As inland sections of the island settled more than the edges, some of those critical drainage slopes flattened out. To restore the angles, the airport had to lay down 160,000 tons of fresh asphalt during a major runway rehabilitation. Below ground, the twisted landscape crippled the buried drainage network. The large pipes that carry rainwater to the sea slowly lost their downward pitch, meaning gravity alone could no longer pull the water off the island. The airport solution was to install 37 heavy mechanical pumps across 10 different locations, literally forcing the rainwater out to sea when the sky opens up. As the physical shape of the island warps, passive geographical systems stop working. Engineers have to step in and replace gravity with active, powered machinery. Look closely at this flooded tarmac. Every centimeter of lost elevation steadily ate away at the distance between the airport's infrastructure and the ocean's surface. In September 2018, Typhoon Jebi exposed exactly what that meant. The storm pushed massive waves right over the coastal defenses. As you can see in this aerial perspective, large sections of the first island's taxiways and runways were completely submerged. High-voltage electrical equipment in the basement shorted out, and the entire airport was paralyzed for more than 2 weeks. Kansai responded with a massive physical upgrade. They raised 6 kilometers of seawall by nearly 3 meters, physically hoisting critical electrical equipment above ground, and installed heavy watertight doors across the facility. They also armored the perimeter. This image shows part of the 40,000 heavy concrete tetrapods they stacked along exposed sections of the seawall to physically break the energy of incoming storm surges. Keeping the terminal floor level wasn't enough. The airport had to armor the entire surface of the island against a rising sea. But ocean waves crashing over a seawall are only the visible threat. Because much of the island's edge is made of permeable rock, high water levels outside during a storm can push invisibly through the gaps, driving the groundwater up from directly beneath the tarmac. This diagram shows how engineers severed that hidden route. They constructed an 11-kilometer underground cutoff wall, plunging 30 meters deep into a stiff layer of clay to physically block seawater from infiltrating the island. Sand drains forced the initial sink. Hydraulic jacks constantly lift the terminal. Asphalt restores the slopes. Mechanical pumps replace gravity. Concrete tetrapods block the surface waves, and buried walls block underground pressure. Kansai is not a finished object resting quietly on a stable foundation. It survives precisely because it operates as a living maintenance system, a sprawling machine that hides constant, massive engineering corrections directly beneath the ordinary passenger experience.